My father was in the Army for 21 years. He retired and moved to a very small town in Central Florida. He got bored after a couple of years, and even though we didn't need the money between his retirement and what my mom was making, he wanted to go back to work. He started working at various gas stations, and it being a small town, the owners wouldn't care if I came there and helped him out with stocking coolers or even running the register, as long as I didn't sell any beer or smokes. This all took place in the late 80s and early 90s. The actual story I'm going to tell took place in 1990. I remember the date well because it was shortly after my birthday. Being 15 in Florida, I had just gotten my learner's permit, and my dad would let me drive him to and from work just to get some experience on the road both that day and at night. I was sitting in my usual spot at a table that was set up along the windows, book in hand, feet propped up, and a Mountain Dew on the table along with some snacks. I would generally spend most of the evening that way, reading books, getting up to run the register or stock the cooler at different times. I remember glancing up because something caught my attention that was unusual, and I realized that a lady was walking up to our parking lot from the direction of the interstate. This in itself was really strange because where we were located, you didn't get many people walking, and definitely not walking from the direction of the interstate. I figured she had broken down somewhere and was coming to use the phone to call for a tow truck or something. I was completely wrong. She came into the store, looked around for a few minutes, and I remember getting just a strange and creepy feeling about her. She walked up to the counter and started telling my dad a story about how she had gotten stranded. She asked for a ride up to the next big town up north from us, Ocala. My dad lets her know that he's working and there is no way that he can take her. She turns and looks at me, and while she is looking away from him, my dad catches my eye and subtly shakes his head no. I was confused for a second, but then she turns back to my dad and points at me, asking if I can take her. My dad responded back that I only had a learner's permit and wouldn't be able to drive her anywhere and then drive back. Normally, I would have done it, even though it was illegal, because I'd done it a few times before already. I didn't argue with my dad since this was completely out of character for him. He was normally chatty with the customers, but for whatever reason he was almost curt and dismissive of her. Turns out he had a bad vibe about her from the minute he had seen her walking up the drive. She cussed him for a minute, and he basically told her to get out of the store. She slammed the door open. I thought the glass was going to break from how hard she had slammed it, and then she stalked out of the store and down the driveway. I kept an eye on her and continued to watch as she makes her way back up to the interstate and then starts up the northbound on-ramp. Almost a year passes, and I'm in my bedroom less than a week before my 16th birthday. I hear my dad yelling from the living room, "Son, get in here and look at this." I quickly run to the living room and see my dad pointing at the TV, and look at the mugshot of the lady up on the screen, and immediately recognize her. She was the lady who had been in the store. Turns out I almost gave a car ride to Eileen Werner's, who was later convicted of being a serial murderer and then later put to death. I still have nightmares about what could have happened.